My last chance for romance tonight. I need you by me, beside me. When I'm bad, I'm so
bad. Before we begin, I just want to check that everyone has a card. Otherwise, there are some available here. We're sorry that we can't supply chairs for all of you. You can put that blame squarely on Peter this morning. Well, thanks for being here this morning. There were three philosophers, theologians, educators, Jean Vanier, Maria Montessori, and Waldorf Steiner. Each of them had an approach to education, to the care of people. Maria was about giving people independence to encourage learning. Steiner was about teaching the whole being, all parts of the person. Vanier was about the importance of relationship and community, living in community. These three approaches together combined defines what we know today as the Hauraki Supported Lifestyle Trust. I'm of course poorly. But it's important to be clear that that didn't define who Peter was. It would be easy for him to take these three approaches, label it as a business plan, and then let the organisation run by itself. But Peter was never about business plans. Peter lived it. It was who he was. And it was why that approach, and any approach, is only successful dependent on the people behind it. You all know that Peter had a massive heart, and often that heart would get ahead of him. As one of the members of the Trust Board who are here today, there are times in our meetings where we remember to continue to preserve the essence of what Peter created. But there are also times where we remember to not follow some of the things that he suggested. And that's why you're here. Peter wasn't perfect, but he was blinking perfect to us. And so today is about rightfully taking time to honour him, to continue to think of him, not because of the legacy of the trust, but because of the man behind it. A few years ago, he came to visit me at work across the road, and after a lengthy conversation, as I got up, assuming that he was ready to leave, he said, "Well, aren't you going to pray for me?" So I'm going to briefly do that. Then Malt's going to come. So we're going to do a 2-for-1, do this prayer that Peter may ground me for, but also give thanks for the food that will follow later. E te matua hei mua kui a mātou e ihoa hei tohu i a mātou mahi. Kia whai gloria e kui a mātou mahi katoa. Wai hoki whakatapua tēnei wai, tēnei kai, kua hora nei, mō mātou katoa. Amen. Malt's going to come and begin and share with us.
Apologies if I have to read something. So, For those of you that don't know me, I'm Morgan, and some of you may know me as Morgie. Now, that is not a name that I would pick for myself at all. And of course, that was one when I was younger I would push back on very, very strongly. What did this mean? Of course, I was then called Little Morgie, right? And that continued and still does, I think, until I'm no longer little. Now, Morgie, though, is a name that I now cherish. You know, it was given to me by Pete and Murray some, let's say, 40 years ago. And, you know, everyone in this community knows me as Morgie. Not anywhere else in the world calls me Morgie, by the way. Of course, Pete also called me some other names as well. But, you know, one that he did call me was Pussy Boy. Now, this is a term of endearment, I assure you, and it's related to the fact of my preference for the female anatomy over the male. This is something he never understood, and I'm sorry to continue to disappoint you, Pete. And I think often he would introduce me how disappointed he was in my preference for the female sex. So, as you can probably understand, Pete is the closest of friend and dearest of family to me. Now, I'm going to keep this quite brief, but firstly, I just want to thank all of you that have come here today to celebrate Pete and his life. This is a recognition of the positive impact that he has had on everybody here and on the community. I'd also like to thank all those who helped put this together today. You know, Pete would be just so humbled and emotional on the support and love you've all shown over the last few weeks. Now, Pete was actually often very insecure and embarrassed when affection and love, you know, came back to him. He was humble in this regard, and on his behalf, I'm also humbled that you've all come here. Thank you. Now, so I've been absolutely blessed and privileged to know both Pete and Murray in my life. Murray, my biological uncle, and, you know, Pete's earlier partner. I will now miss Pete and Murray, I will now miss Pete as I miss Murray, and that is on a daily basis. And I'm sure all of us will, you know, have that same feeling. And for me personally, I would be so proud and, you know, just so happy if I could leave this world with just a little bit of the impact that both of these amazing men have had on it. It is phenomenal. So, now, Maya Angelou, who's a poet, once said that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Now, Pete maybe just sometimes occasionally said some things that we should probably all forget, right? He probably even potentially did a few things that would be worthwhile forgetting as well. For me, though, I'll never forget how Pete makes me feel. Love you, Pete. Thank you.
Morg and I joined with Kim for dinner the other night. She cooked a mean roast meal. I love my food, but that night I felt it was so difficult to eat it because of the sheer rawness and the emotion that sat in Morg, the depth of his loss and the depth of all that he has grown up to know. So I just want to let you know that we're here as your family, and we're, of course, listening to you speak. We're thinking of you as we also think of Pete, as Kim, the roast cooker, comes.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming. I also just wanted to add to Morgie's thank yous, and to thank Brendon for being the ringleader in this, and for Cass and Vic hosting us here today. Thank you to Kirsty and Viv, who, in between their Hollywood commitments, filmed in Thames earlier this week, have managed to create a slideshow of Peter's life in words, and to Janie for creating a memorial in lieu of Peter's ashes, including a portrait done by some of the lifestylers of the Trust. Lastly but not least, thank you to Chris and Jane for your ongoing support. How come I'm here? Well, Peter and I met each other over 41 years ago and became unlikely friends. I can't figure out what attracted us to each other, but I thank God that it did. We met at work in residential care for people with disabilities. I was 19 years old and still living with my parents in the southern suburbs of Sydney. Peter was 31 and not long arrived in Sydney and just turned up on a shift with me after a night out in the inner city at a sleazeball. He had pinky red hair, matching glasses and matching jelly shoes. The story goes that he came straight onto shift after partying all night and meeting the love of his life, Murray Linds. Over the next 8 years, while Peter and Murray lived in Australia, I continued to be part of their lives. Invites to dinner parties, picnics and parades included my now husband, Philip. Peter was also always so worried I would end up on the single shelf, but I snagged myself a good one. A man who not only understood my friendship with Peter, but embraced and supported it. Murray was the same. Murray would buy me a ticket and collect me at the airport and bring me home to surprise Peter if ever he was feeling down and depressed. Philip and Murray also enjoyed spending time together discussing politics and economics and topics way beyond Peter or my interest level. Peter and I found other activities to amuse ourselves while they talked and talked and talked. Those amusements may have contained champagne, gin, red wine, white wine, depth charges, cheese and crackers. Reminds me of a Peterism. Balanced dinner tonight is a bottle of wine and a block of cheese. I learnt so much from Peter on how to be with people who are different to me. His unique beliefs and ways in supporting the lives of people with disabilities is one that was in his thoughts and practice well before the days of deinstitutionalisation of large hospitals. He was the strongest advocate for people with disabilities. He promoted the powerless. He supported the special needs. He loved the unlovable. Peter wanted to make the life of every person with a disability better and give them a good go at a good life. He sometimes didn't articulate it in the way that society tells you how you should speak, but his actions spoke louder than any group of words he could put together. I knew it, and I dare say others in this room knew it too. Another Peterism, somewhere to go, something to do, someone to love. And with this vision, the foundation for the Supported Lifestyle Hierarchy Trust was created. Fast forward a few years when Peter and Murray left Australia and travelling and working in Western Australia and Queensland, they ended up in Thames. From the lights and traffic and bars and chaos of South Dowling Street, Surrey Hills, they packed up their life and Rhodesian Ridgeback and moved to 106 Amy Street. In 1994, the Trust was established and the dream started with the holy trilogy of Ideas Man Peter, Action Man Murray and Free Man Matt, the best employee who worked for Love and bin-in vouchers. I came over to visit them in those very early days when something to do part of the philosophy was growing parsley for the Sealy Street Cafe and washing tea towels for Dixon's Motor Camp. Within 10 years the trust starting, there was an operational commercial laundromat that washed linens and towels operated by the lifestylers. In addition to the parsley growing, there was now a fully functional farm that had plenty of farm animals and some obscure residents like a pair of donkeys and ostriches. Here again, Peter shows us how he loved the unlovable. He used to brush and kiss those donkeys, showing them real care. I still haven't figured out why the ostriches and how to love one. Apart from the produce, the chickens, the pigs, the cows provided, there was a multitude of plants that sustained the commercial kitchen that provided nourishing and delicious meals for the lifestylers. Big picture my friend had coming to fruition, making positive big changes to people's lives, but the families who could now watch, changes to people's lives, not only just the lifestylers who lived within the trust, but the families who could now watch their child, sibling, family member or friend flourish and incorporate the lifestyle way. Somewhere to go, something to do, someone to love. Trust is amazing. Peter would say It is my legacy, like a seed that I plant and never get to see to become a tree. Well, Peter, that tree is fabulous, and many others sit in the shade of that tree while it flourishes. The trust is indeed Peter and Murray's legacy. Sadly, on December 1, 2005, Murray died whilst away in Wellington with the lifestylers representing Thames Valley at the Special Olympics. It was a loss, I believe, Peter never recovered from. Peter's dedication to the trust and lifestylers continued, and this work was acknowledged in 2017 with him being awarded the Queen's Services Medal. This proudly hangs in his home in Pollen Street. Family played a big part in Peter's life. He adored his mum. He admired and respected his dad, always aiming to be the person they wanted him to be. He eventually realised that by becoming exactly the person he turned out to be was the best fit for him. I think they grew to understand him. I never met Neville, Peter's dad, but looking back at old photos over the last couple of days, Peter looks very much like him. Pauline, or Mumsy as I used to call her, well, Peter may have looked like his dad, but he's just like his mum. Later in life, when she moved to Richmond Villas here in Thames, Peter would often be down there invading her space of driveway drinks, mahjong playing, sport of any type being watched on TV, or a game of patience on the iPad. But of course, he was always welcomed, and they shared meals, wine, and gossip about the goings-on in Fantail Lane, Richmond Villas, or Fanny Lane, as they preferred to call it. The last message I received from Peter on the morning of the day he died were 2 photos of magnolia trees he had planted, one here in his front garden and the other in Oregon. The message was, same tree, Pauline's favourite. Emotional moment. Peter was in awe of his brother Richard. He would often tell me stories of them growing up together and Richard being the younger but larger of the two. Oh no, Peter was, I beg your pardon, and Peter being the larger of the two. And he would beat Richard up or beat others up who harassed Richard. As I wrote this, I realised how wrong it sounded, but I never even queried it. He did play rugby though, and he certainly was a big fella. Peter missed Richard when he moved to Australia with his wife Deb and 3 beautiful girls, Courtney, Tennille, who's with us here today from Australia, and it's her birthday, and Emily. As much as Peter would like you to think he didn't like children, those girls were precious to him. In saying that, if there were ever a gift to be bought for them or a birthday remembered, it was all Murray. Whilst Peter's side of the immediate family was small, Murray's was very extensive. Some of those family members are here today. Peter was their brother-in-law, uncle, and cousin too. Peter's cousins and family friends, the family you choose to have and not related by blood, are also with us today. I may know some stories about your growing up with Peter, stealing Auntie's medications out of the medicine cabinet in an attempt to get high. In fact, if any of you are here today have shared an experience or a story with Peter, it's likely I know that story. You're lucky though. Menopause and ageing has stolen a few of those memories from me, but a few good ones remain. Just as likely he has told you stories of me. They may not be true though. He probably fabricated them unless, of course, they were about me enjoying my life. I'll own those. I've enjoyed a lot of my life with Peter. I've laughed an awful lot with him. Philip would often ask me if I had been on the phone to Peter as he could hear me laughing from the other end of the house. I'll worry I'll lose my laughter. Then I just remember some of the things we did together and things he said, and my smile returns. I could write for days on Peter's stories. If you want to know some more about Peter's stories, go and chat with our friend Lisa. She's a great storyteller. She's at the front and you'll hear her laughing. I'm sure you will have stories in your life that involve Peter. They may not all be good, but there is bound to be at least one positive one or a fun interaction with him, a reason that you have decided to acknowledge the man he was and come here and farewell him today. In the last couple of years, Peter may have pissed a few people off and pushed them away. There are a few theories out there why he did this. The ones I'm going with are ill health and mental health. In the case of his back, that was always a source of pain and discomfort for him. Sadly, the operations really did not remedy the issue and the pain continued. Other ailments as well made life uncomfortable for Peter, and a few may know that he chose to self-medicate. A recent health issue was his prostate cancer, which he was treated for in America. Public service announcement for all you men out there, get checked. And if you need to have treatment, research your options. Being a pain obviously made him cranky, and if he was a prick to you, I apologise on his behalf. Peter had lots of loves, dogs, gardening and music come to mind. Who could ever forget Muzzer the Great Dane? That dog was his saviour, very much like his namesake. It was a sight to see the lumbering figure of Peter walking Muzz, or a pony as he would tell people, and offer small children a ride on Muzz's back. Music was always played loud. He sang well, was a great clapper, and moved to the music with joy. His music choice was eclectic, as you'll hear on the playlist we have chosen for him today. He loved to play musical instruments. He has a selection of ukuleles and tried to teach himself how to play. He then had to buy himself a baby grand piano to tune the ukuleles. I'm not sure whether that worked, but it was an imposing sight in the room of 819 Pollen. Peter had a green thumb. He loved being in the garden in his backyard, bright smiles, trust farm, or in his section. His mantra was chop, drop and rot. It seems to have worked. He loved flowers with a scent. He loved weeds. I briefly touched on Peter's difficulty with words and appropriateness. This used to be fun and challenging when I would receive an email, or even prior to that, a written letter from him telling me what he'd been up to. Sometimes just a response to a question I'd asked would lead me to read the response several times and try and decipher exactly what he was saying. It was like a combination of shorthand and hieroglyphics. Once I showed him the way to use talk to text on his phone. It was marginally better, but he loved those emojis. I like to think he's provided me with great skills for completing cryptic crosswords. Having a phone that accessed Facebook and Instagram for Peter was a whole new world. He didn't need to write anything. He could just forward you a meme or a video or a dirty joke or a link onto an inappropriate website that would lead him to be booted out of Facebook several times. After Peter died, I trolled through our messages on WhatsApp. Wow, there are a lot of photos of foods and drinks and gin and red wine bottles and dogs and fat bottoms, not his, other people's, and gardens and activities he was doing. Who would have thought Peter would enjoy being in a dirt buggy screaming around the sand dunes of Yuma with Richard, or sitting in a trailer park surrounded by other grey nomads? Apart from the photos, he would send through funny little sayings, beautiful poems, or filthy jokes. Last year, I received a particularly lovely saying from him that was titled, "Things I Don't Say Enough to My Best Friend." My best memories are with you. You make my life better just by being in it. Thanks for always listening to my rants. I know if I fall, you'll always pick me up. I love and appreciate our friendship. To which I clicked on the love heart emoji. A few months later, I found my response to Peter's message. It was titled, Yellow. Who is your yellow? Yellow is someone who brings sunshine into your life without even trying. They are your warmth on a bad day, your loudest laugh, your comfort in silence. They brighten even your darkest moments just by being there. And I added, I will always be your yellow. Farewell, my Pedro. I will love and miss you until the day I die.
One of Pete's love languages other than wine and cheese was loving people. Cass and Vic, who are looking after us today, their love language is food. So we have a plan. Shortly, Sonia's going to come and share with us, then we're going to hear from Jan. We heard that Kim has already heard all your stories. But if you feel that your story has escaped her dementia and menopause, then there'll be a brief opportunity for you to come and share with us. So perhaps when Jan comes, we can let you know, Cass, and you can do your mahi with your team, and then there'll be a time for anyone to come. Sonia's going to come and share.
I'm chasing Kim fast with that menopause, so it was amazing. I can't remember anything. So I know a lot in the room, and I'm going to try not to look at any of you. So for those of you that don't know, I'm Murray's biological niece, but also Peter's niece. I've tried to make this share some of the funny moments because I thought we might enjoy that today. But when Pete and Murray got off that flight from Sydney and arrived back in New Zealand in the 90s, they came to Thames to stay with Uncle Peter and Auntie Ruth until they got set up. Pete had this dream of setting up the trust, and Murray was making it happen. Dad and I picked them up from the airport. Dad had bought them a little Ford Laser to get them started, as he still does. I'm doing again today for someone else. So after checking on Sunny, their gorgeous Great Dane Ridgeback, we headed for Thames. Murray rode with Dad, and I followed behind in the Falcon with Pete. I was still a teenager, and Pete didn't know me very well yet. He clutched the handle above the door the entire trip. Looking back, he was probably terrified of being driven by a teenager, feeling car sick and not being in control. At the time, though, I was just laughing the whole way to Thames in the dark and the rain, listening to this wildly funny, unfiltered man beside me. A few years later, I lived with Pete and Murray for 6 months when I came back from an OE to work at the Trust. Murray had warned me that Pete might not put up with me for very long, but the two of us found a real connection through our work at the Trust. We would dream up new ideas together, scheme about what could be done next, and Murray would be the one telling us both to switch our brains off and relax. People who didn't know Pete, well, often only saw the surface version of him, the shock factor, the outrageous comments, the things that flew out of his mouth that left everyone else speechless. But those who took the time to really know him saw something much deeper, a man who cared fiercely, felt deeply, and never stopped advocating for people who couldn't advocate for themselves. I was wondering whether to put this next bit in, but I'm leaving it in. One of my hard case moments or memories of Pete was sitting in an interview at the Trust. The applicant won't mind me sharing this because they still laugh about it with me today. Pete could speak quickly, sometimes before his brain had quite caught up. And he was trying to explain that sometimes there was a bit of fun on the farm. What he meant to say was, sometimes we play hide and seek on the farm. What actually came out was, sometimes we play hide the sausage on the farm. We never played hide the sausage on the farm. My very PC HR jaw nearly hit the floor. That was Pete, unintentionally outrageous and absolutely unforgettable. He hated flying. I'll never forget us on a tiny plane to Palmerston North, Pete gripping the bright red exit handle so tightly that I was almost too scared to speak up in case he hadn't realised what he was holding. I banned him from the exit aisles after that. Pete started working with people with disabilities back in the days of institutions, and he became very outspoken very quickly about the way people were being treated. I once visited Kimberley with him, one of the last institutions in New Zealand, and a place where he had worked. He showed me the part out the back where he was sent to work so that no one could hear his ideas about letting people actually have a life. That tells you everything about him. He believed people deserve dignity, purpose, and joy. He loved seeing a couple of lifestylers come out of Kimberley and spend their final years living some of their very best ones. Pete Murray and I bought the old trust farm together originally, and what fun and energy went into that place. Pete would sit at night with an A4 sheet of paper, sketching out his plans for every inch of it. Before long, what had been one square paddock became a full hobby farm. Pig pens, veggie gardens, smaller paddocks, a firewood area, an orchard planted straight away, donkeys to brush. But even those sketches, Pete wasn't just thinking about the land. He was imagining possibility. He was thinking about all the ways people could spend time there, be involved, and have something meaningful to do during the day. Somewhere to go, something to do. Pete had a way with these turning ideas into little sayings that he repeated every day, every minute. I added that bit now. Somewhere to go, something to do. Busy people are happy people. I tell that to my team that I manage now. They now know where it comes from. And one of my favourites is Who's Driving the Tractor? That one came from a day on the farm when Matt Flood was driving a hired tractor and doing a perfectly decent job. Just not quite the way Pete would have done it. Pete was standing on the side of the paddock, losing his lolly and yelling instructions every 5 seconds. Finally, I turned to him and said, "Who's driving the tractor, Pete?" To his credit, he stopped, and after that, he used that line himself whenever we needed to stop and remember who was actually in charge of a situation. Pete loved his mum, as Kim has mentioned, and luckily she loved him right back, including his wicked sense of humour. I was often with him when he visited her in Rotorua, before she moved here to be closer with him in her last years. He would burst through the door with something hilariously offensive like, "I've just come in to check on my inheritance," or "Would you like me to unplug your oxygen machine?" She would give him a loving tap, a hug, and tell him what a fool he was, all with the biggest grin on her face. Pete signed off cards with ridiculous, rude little drawings. If you've ever had one, you know what that is. And somehow thought it was perfectly appropriate to send sympathy cards to people getting married. That was his humour, cheeky and completely his own. Underneath all the outrageousness, Pete was sensitive, he cared deeply, he loved dogs, listening to loud opera music, and found peace in the garden. Love you, Pete.
Morning, everyone. I was actually going to try and wing this, but when I spoke to Brendon last night and I happened to say to him that I knew Pete before the trust, and he said, "Gosh, he must be really old." And I thought, well, I better write something down, and that's what I'm going to focus on today. So I first met Pete in 1993, before the Hauraki Lifestyle Trust existed, when he applied for a team leader position at Pathways Trust in Thames. I was one of the managers on the interview panel. The role was to oversee support workers helping people with what we then called long-term mental illness transition from institutions into community living. After the interview, the other manager and I looked at each other and said, "Oh, well, he's a bit different, isn't he?" We knew straight away he'd connect brilliantly with the residents. But team leader though? We weren't entirely sure how well he'd fit neatly into systems of hierarchy. Diplomatic wasn't exactly the first word that came to mind about Pete. But we also knew this: Pete would get things done. He might not always do them himself, but he'd make sure they happened. He had this huge personality, this slightly off-centre, irreverent sense of humour, and a way of making people feel seen. We actually liked him immediately, even while wondering what on earth we might be unleashing on the organisation. And of course, we soon found out. We used to call him Big Pete, not because he was physically big, but because everything about him was big. Big personality, big stories, big laugh, big talker and charmer. He always had a very big dog, and judging by the number of times he put his foot in it, probably a pretty big mouth too. Our first job back then was finding accommodation and setting up units ready for residents moving into the community. We were working across Thames, Coromandel and Waihi, building services almost from scratch. Each team leader was given a work vehicle with very clear instructions to look after it and use it only for work purposes. At first, because Pete lived nearby, we allowed him to take the vehicle home at night, until services were fully operational. Well, 3 months later, once the units were occupied and staff were on shift work, we told Pete the vehicle had to stay at work overnight for the on-call staff. Well, that unfortunately created what you might call a rather large problem. The very big dog I mentioned earlier was a Great Dane. I think that's what it was. I can't quite remember its name, but now somebody said Sunny. Yeah. What we hadn't realised was that Pete had quietly been using the work car as the dog's kennel every night because apparently the dog wasn't an outside dog. Now, had we discovered this early, perhaps things could have been salvaged, but after 3 months the dog had slowly and methodically consumed most of the interior of the vehicle. The back seat had been eaten through so completely, the boot was exposed, the spare tyre had teeth marks in it, there were no interior door handles, no carpet, and no front seat headrests. To this day, I genuinely don't know whether the dog ate them or that Pete found the remains each morning and quietly disposed of the evidence. When confronted with this, Pete, what the hell happened? He simply shrugged and said, I know. Lucky we built a dog kennel now. This one's buggered. What could we do? We laughed. The CEO wanted him fired immediately, but we argued to keep him because despite the chaos, and there was always chaos somewhere around Pete, he was extraordinary with the residents. Pete had this rare ability to cut straight through pretense. He'd sit with someone writing a care plan and say things like, well, what do you want to do that shit for? You can do better than that. If someone suggested knitting, Pete would suggest bungee jumping. And when they recalled in horror, he'd grin and say, all right then, what's somewhere in between that'll actually get you out of bed in the morning? And somehow underneath the outrageousness, there was wisdom. If someone was unwell or frightened, Pete could sit beside them, talk them through it, make them laugh, calm them down. He listened differently. He understood people differently. He built trust with people who often had never trusted anyone before. That was his gift. Then came the time for Pete and Murray to start what became the Hauraki Lifestyle Trust in 1994, something many of you here know far more about than I do. But even in those very early days, you could already see what they were building, not just a service, but a home, a community for people who had spent too much time of their lives being overlooked. Pete continued working with us while the trust got established, and they bought the neighbouring house and took on their first residents. Because there needed to be overnight supervision and Pete worked days with us while Murray worked days with the residents, I offered to help out by sleeping over in the spare room. I lasted 2 nights. I can't even begin to describe what a horror story those nights were. After the first night I told Pete, I don't think I can do this. One of the residents actually needs constant waking care. Pete just waved and said, nah, it'll be different tonight, I'll sort it. Well, he had sorted it. The second night was somehow even worse. By morning I was convinced I either needed counselling or witness protection. The next day I told Pete, I can't do this, Pete. And without missing a beat said, yeah, I heard it all happening, but I figured either you'd survive and never come back, or you'd be dead and no matter what, I'd have to find someone else. So, well, yes. And that, in a nutshell, was Pete. Completely inappropriate, absolutely outrageous, funny as hell, and underneath all of it, one of the most deeply caring, loyal and committed people I've ever known. He visited Easy and I every time he and Muzz, his new dog, escaped to his hidey hole in Ototu Bay, north of Colville. Pete wasn't polished. He wasn't careful with words. He probably broke every management and decency rule ever written, but he gave people dignity, laughter, honesty and hope, often when nobody else could. And I think that's how I'll always remember him, larger than life, slightly terrifying, impossible to manage, making us laugh when we shouldn't have been laughing, and somehow, against all odds, changing people's lives for the better while doing it.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to try really hard to keep this together. It's more because I'm also nervous because you're all staring at me. There are so many things that I could say about this. Sorry. There are so many things I could say about this beautiful human. I've written some notes and it doesn't even compare to what has already been shared. I think we all knew him maybe a little bit differently. Maybe we knew a different side to him. Maybe I knew a different softness to him. Maybe I was sheltered from some of the weirdness. For those of you, where's my speech? I'm going to stick to my speech now. Okay. I'm Tennille Rutherford, daughter of Richard Rutherford, Peter's beautiful brother, which makes me proud niece number 2 of 3. First of all, an apologies on behalf of my 2 sisters, Courtney and Emily, and my mother, Deb, who would have loved to have been here today, but unfortunately, it's just me. They do, however, send their love and appreciation to you all. Peter Ewan Rutherford. He was amazing. He was cheeky. He was funny. He had a wicked sense of humour. He was inappropriate. He cared deeply, even if he didn't always show it. He had an incredible laugh. He was kind and caring, and he did so much for others. He worked hard. He lived a full life, one that has ended way too soon, but he lived it with passion. And most importantly, he knew that the key to life was love. I wrote that these are the things you all know about him, and I'm about to share some things that maybe you didn't know about him, but I think you all know all of this about him, but I'll continue. He loved fiercely his family and his friends. He was wise and insightful. He was a self-confessed mummy's boy. He and Grandy, or Pauline as you would know her, had a relationship like no other. He loved drawing dicks. And even though I'm an adult now, I still giggle the same way that my sisters and I did when we were little. And more personally, he was an amazing uncle and great uncle, which he was very proud of, and a very loving and a very loved brother-in-law. Peter lived with more grief than most people experience in a lifetime, but he found love once again. He embraced this new chapter of life with passion, with love, and with a deep appreciation for a second chance at happiness. He knew how amazing it was to have 2 loves, our gorgeous Murray, who I could speak about a lot more, but maybe we'll save that for after, and of course his beloved husband, Rich. He was happy. It's important to also acknowledge, which I believe Kim already covered, his work with the Trust and how in 2017 he earned the prestigious Queen's Service Medal, pictured here, for the services to people with disabilities. The medal was formally presented by the Governor-General, and it was a significant and proud moment or occasion, which my sister Emily describes as a proud as punch moment. She and Grandy, or Pauline, both attended proudly, filled with admiration for Pete's incredible achievements. His wishes were always for his ashes to return and rest beneath our family tree in Rotorua, what he called a full circle moment, a final resting place where he could be at peace and look back on an incredible life. Although we will all continue to miss him dearly, he will leave a lasting impression on each of us for the rest of our lives, and what a legacy he leaves behind. Thank you all for being here to celebrate Uncle Peter. His life was richer for having all of you in it, and we all know our lives were definitely richer for having him in ours. So for now, kiss kiss to you, Pete. Love you.
Tennille, thank you, and not just for making the big trip and the importance of having you here, but thank you for finding the ability to articulate the bigness, not just for you, but for your family back home as well. I'm going to ask the team to come and prepare the slideshow for us to watch. We're going to sing while they do that. We're going to sing to Kim's Big Yellow. Sunshine. Okay. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. The skies are red. How much I love you. One more time. Are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away.
Let's dance, let's chance for love. Yes, it's my last chance for romance tonight. I need you by me, beside me, to guide me, to hold me, to scold me. 'Cause when I'm bad, I'm so bad. So let's dance, let's dance, let's dance, let's dance, let's dance, let's dance tonight. Let's dance for love. Yes, it's my last dance for romance tonight. Oh, I need you by me, beside me, to guide me, to hold me, to scold me. 'Cause when I'm bad, I'm so bad. So let's dance, let's dance, let's dance, let's dance, let's dance, let's dance tonight. Yeah. Be my Mr. Right. My appetite. I can be sure that you're the one for me. All that I ask is that you dance with me, dance with me, dance with me. Yeah.
Here we go. The truth, I'm tired of my mind. Ooh, I'm a believer in a child.
Let's dance, let's dance, let's dance, let's dance.
Excellency to receive the Queen's Service Medal. Mr. Peter Rutherford of Thames for services to people with disabilities. Mr. Rutherford established the Supported Lifestyle Hauraki Trust in Thames, which supports 63 men and women with information.
I think he looks absolutely fantastic. I made a beautiful son. Didn't I do a good job? Apart from the fact that he growls at me all the time, he's really neat. And I'm very, very proud. Hey.
Have you got your hearing aids in?
Pardon?
They said some really nice words, didn't they? Even from her mum. Ma'am. Rhymes with jam. So it was worth the trip.
So is this what it's all about? Networking.
Kirsten, give thanks for those precious memories that you've shared this morning. Well, we come to the end of this time together, and the last word appropriately belongs to you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your love for Pete and for Murray. Thank you for giving your love legs and being here in person today. More, Kim, thank you. Cass and the Vic and the team have got food ready for us. Cass, I guess we can kind of just grab some food and pull up a chair and sit wherever we like. And I encourage you to continue those stories today. Thanks everyone for being here.